Hey, what's up? We're doing a long breakdown of my recreation of Aaliyah's Rock the Boat. So, without further ado, let's take a listen. Here's the original track. Here's my recreation. Cool. And here's my recreation without the acapella. I have the acapella isolated. I do it in RX8. Here it is muted. Yeah. This was such a fun beat to recreate. I play it all the time in a band that I play in called Reverse here in Toronto. We do this and lots of other awesome R&B hip hop covers. And we played instrumental. So it was really fun to do a serious deep dive into what every single sound is actually doing. Okay, so I'm producing these tracks from scratch. I'm basically designing all the sounds and playing in all the parts and then mixing and mastering it as close to the original as possible. It's a really good exercise to try to match what the original recording did in terms of volume and punch and width and timbre, making sure that the right harmonics for all these sounds are as accurate as possible. I often find that when you're in the design stage, when you really hone in on one little sound with good headphones so you can really hear it clearly, by the time you've gone through every sound and tuned it in to sound as close as you can to your ears, by the time you've compiled everything and played all the parts in, it's probably going to sound pretty close to the original. Just the sum of the parts will sound like that. And then I'd say that gets you about 60% of the way there, getting the exact sounds, and then maybe 50% of the way there. And then the other 50% is the producing of it and the mixing of it, balancing the sounds, the transient design, the dynamic control, the compression stages, the gain staging, the mix bus compression and saturation, and finally the mastering at the end. That's the last 50% that gets you there. Without that, it'll sound pretty close. It'll sound like a pretty good recreation, but you'll be able to know that it's different. I think the thing that allows you to actually sometimes not tell, there's a few times where I forgot I wasn't on my track just because I lost track of it. And, it's in order to get to that place, you have to really dial in the mix details and the production details. Okay, so let's start. Let's go through. Not take too long, but this is a fun one. Lots of percussion. So many percussion, little blips and things to design and run to reverbs and like resample. It was really fun to make. Let's take a listen to the kick. Let's play it one more time. This is the recreation with the vocal. One more time here. Cool. All right. I'm going to mute the Aaliyah acapella track so that we can hear it a bit clearer now. We're going to listen to the kick. A pretty simple kick sound. These tracks surprisingly there's bass there for sure, but surprisingly, if it was left up to me to set my bass levels, I'll always push it a bit too hard. And when you actually reference against the original, there isn't that much bass in like really pushed low end. because it's all about the mid-range. The punchiness comes from the mid-range, and then the bass is just there to support it. You know, it's there and it's like it fills it out, but it's not. You're not pushing it so hard that it's becoming the main role. Like the kick has to be somewhere in the mid-range. So that's the sound. I find a lot of these sounds using XO. There's other programs too that do this kind of thing. But for me, I'm just really used to it. I can flip through really quickly to find a sound. So if I find a kick like this that's close, you can search for other sounds that are similar. And I'm just listening for I'm listening for the quality of the original, the same amount of low end, hopefully the same pitch in the sub region, the same amount of mid presence, like the beater sound, the similar decay. It doesn't have to be exactly the same because you can adjust that, and same top end kind of clickiness, the same character in all those three regions. That's really what I'm looking for. So this isn't the exact same kick that's on the recording, but it checked the boxes for me of like the defining qualities of a kick drum. So, you know, I'll go through. That last one was pretty good too. And it shows me, this is a combination of all of my folders all in one. So I don't really even care where it came from, as long as it matches the harmonics that I'm looking for, the right frequency information. I don't care. It's like, it could be the exact kick drum that they used, like sampled from a Linn drum or an 808 or a 909, whatever. It could be anything, like it could be the exact kick drum, but again, I don't care as long as it's like, oh, that check. Okay, good. And then you can further manipulate it, right? So let's go back to the one that we are using. I'm using Saturn to add some saturation, a bit in the low end too, and then the dynamics are all the way down because I wanted that really punchy bottom end. I didn't want to take up any extra space. The subs are really coming from the bass patch, which we'll look at later, the sub bass patch. But the kick is really driving in the mid range. There's a bit of 100s thump, you know, it's thumpy in that 100 range. I'm pushing the mid range to pull like the cardboardy mid range sound out of it. Again, super punchy. Bringing that down to the left makes it really punchy. And then same on the top band. Added saturation, making it punchier by pulling this dynamics to the left. If we go to the right, it'll affect the sustain of the sound. If I go to the left, the saturation will hit the transients. And then you can mix it back in here, you know, to get the body back in if you want to. But in this case, I wanted it short to match the original. Here's with it. Here's without it. Okay, so without it, we actually got more sub out of it. But that's too much. There isn't that much sub in the original on the kick drum. So check out the original. Okay, now here's mine without it. It's too much sub. It's too much sub. The original has like good mid-range presence. And that's where you're feeling it's like kind of like faking the bottom frequencies because you're feeling it in the mid presence. And your ear makes it like this big kick drum. But there's also a sub bass that has to occupy those frequencies as well. Okay, Saturn 2. Then I'm adjusting the transients and the sustain even more here, just adding a bit. Looks like I wanted a bit more like clicky kind of beater sound out of it to match the original. Even more EQ to fine tune, adjust where the kind of impact of the low end was coming from. Let's talk about the rim shot, which is the most important thing on the track. Okay, there's a few other things mixed into this bus, but we're just focusing on the rim shot for now. It's by far the punchiest thing in the track. It's the most up front. Here's the original. It's like it's a sharp rim shot. I went through so many samples in XO looking for something that had that like a really high sharp quality, and it was really hard to find. So what I ended up doing was combining three different sounds to get something close. So first up is this sound. Okay, so I needed it to have a bit of like almost like snappy, clappy quality underneath it to fill the body of the rim shot out a bit. And then there is this sound. And that's just a really clicky transient to mix in to just get a bit more of a pokey top end, because the original rim shot is quite pokey, like it's right up there. And then here's the main rim shot stick sound. Okay. And those are all being bussed to a group here and all being processed on one bus here. And I'm sending it to my room. And you'll see from previous videos that I always like to have a room going on. I'm using Sunset Sound again, but it might be something else too. This is usually the first one I reach for just because I can flip through different rooms and find something that matches the quality. Really, this is more valuable to me than like the best one room plugin. It's like it's only one. I need to be able to flip through, and then when you hear the right kind of reverb room sound, it's like that sounds like the quality that matches the original. It'll just kind of jump out at you. I always filter this. I take out some of the bottom end so it's not muddying up the sub region. I'm pushing the top end a little bit. Full width. I usually take the decay down because for me this is supposed to be like a short room sound. This isn't functioning as a long reverb. It's just adding some character to the attacks of a sound. It'll help put things back a bit more in the mix, less digital, more analog, right? This is what I think of like close to me is really present and clicky and not much reverb. Back here is like murky and like it's just getting pushed back further away from you, right? Less high end, less transient information, more easy attacks. Okay, so that's sending there on the rim bus. Looks like I'm pulling down the sustain a little bit here, adding this mojo knob, which is basically just a EQ curve that is preset for snare. It adds top end and low end. It's a nice curve though. I often end up using it. If it sounds good, I put it on. Then black box, which we've seen before for some added saturation. A lot of times I'll reach for saturation before compression because these samples are probably already compressed and they're already pretty cleaned up. It's not like what you have to do with like a recording in a room from like an actual drummer. You would get that mic source and yeah, you'd probably have to compress it and like do some work to get it to a point where these samples are already at that point. They've already maybe ran it through some tape, saturated it, compressed it to like make it really punchy sounding. So a lot of times I don't want to compress it anymore. You can, but I like the original sound. So most of the time I end up reaching for saturation first when I'm working with samples because I just want to add a bit more harmonic content of some type. I think without it, it was sounding a bit too dull. Here's without it. Here's with it. Yeah. Yeah. So pretty subtle, just adding a little bit of like crispy top end. This air band is really good for that. This is pretty subtle work. But I think I just needed a bit more harmonic content coming out of the top end. Great plugin for that. Okay, bongos. This took me a while to get right. It's this sound here. Let's listen to the original. Listen for the bongo. Here's the original. It's like this flammy. It's like a slap and a hit. Two hands. And I don't have a single sample that has two hits like that. So I went into a bunch of different software instruments that had good bongo sounds. I ended up using one. It's called Cuba. It's a percussion software instrument from Native Instrument. This is sampled down. Let's see if I have it open here anywhere. Oh yeah, it looks like I have it here. Okay, cool. So this is what I use. It's disabled now. This is where I got the source from. I turned off the reverb so it was dry so that I could process it myself because it wasn't matching the original. And I got a dry flam sound, which is probably something like, you can see my stages here. So here's the plugin stage up here. That's where the source is from. Let's just see if I can play, if it'll work. It should work. I don't see why it wouldn't. Yeah, okay. Well, that's super distorted. Not sure why. Doesn't matter. Then I took it to this stage. I feel like that was an experiment to just try to get something. And then it's like listening to it, going back and forth to the original. I tried this one out. These are just, I'm taking different cracks at it using different tools. Not bad, not bad. Here's the next one. I thought that was it, so I called it real, but it wasn't close enough. Okay, it's more less of the harmonics in the sound and more of like the slap. What's after that? But I think it's headed in the right direction. Here's the next one. Okay, I don't know why those are distorted so much, but clearly I didn't use it. Here's the final. Here's the one that I ended up using. That's it. So it's not perfect. It's not exactly like the original, but it has a similar enough effect. I wanted to bring more of the tone of like the hand hitting the bongo. So I added some attack here, and I think I wanted more of the body as well to come out. So I put that there. Same. I brought that EQ curve up to brighten it up a little bit. Yep, that's the bongo sound. Next sound is, this was a trial attempt. Here's my bounce down version. Let's hear what I started with. Here's XO. Something I found similar. Okay, let's listen for that sound. Where's Metric AB? Where you at? Okay, let's listen for that little sound there, which is like kind of a wood block, like kind of sound. It's got like a watery effect on it. Let's listen. So it's like it's on an offbeat. It's really quiet back in the mix, but it has like a watery kind of like effect to it. I could have just sampled myself doing that into a microphone. It probably would have been faster and worked out better. But I ended up with that. The sample came from XO. Oh, sorry, no, that's not that. That's where the original sample was. This is what I ended up with. Okay, so super subtle. It's hitting this plugin called Slap, which I've been kind of experimenting with. It's still in demo right now. You can add transients and stuff to it. It's a pretty cool plugin. Then some EQ, then a delay to get that slap sound. Here's with it. Here's without it. Right, so I wanted that to give it like that echoey kind of wet effect. Yep. Next, let's talk about the hi-hats. Okay, so the hi-hats, there's actually 4 different hi-hat sounds. There's 3 main hi-hats playing the groove. There's one on the right channel, there's one down the middle, and then there's one on the left channel. Just slightly to the right and just slightly to the left, just gently panned out. Let's listen to all the hi-hats here. Okay. So we have let's start here. This one on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the one on the left. This is the one on the right. Okay, so this is actually a shaker. I don't think it's a hi-hat. It's got a much easier attack on it. So it's going chako, 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 chako. Now there's a third sound that's right down the middle. It's chako, 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 chako. Here's the one in the middle. And together they sound like this. Okay. This interaction, like I think a lot of people would probably, when they hear this, let's listen to the original and see if you can hear that. Cheko, sit cheko, cheko, sit cheko. Let's listen for that hi-hat pattern. Okay. And then here's mine in context. Okay. So that interaction, I think a lot of people would probably just play one hi-hat sound in, right? Just and it's like it wouldn't have the width. And to me, like this is like the amazing thing about this beat is it's like the interaction between those 3 sounds like adds so much variety and life to that hi-hat sound. It's not, the attack isn't always exactly the same. Like the one on the right is like it's got a shaker effect on it. The one on the left is a longer but pretty tight decay, and the one in the middle is smaller and further back and a really short decay. So let's talk about how I made them. Talk about the one on the right. Or sorry, here's the one in the middle. Sorry, this is the one on. Let's start with the one on the right. That makes the most sense. Here, let me put that up there. Okay, this one was pretty quick to find because I knew it was like a short shaker. It looks like it's, oh yeah, this was the one. It's coming from the 626, and I think this is the Roland 626 drum machine, and I think this is one of the ones where when I clicked over onto it on EXO, it was like, oh, that's 100% it. Like it matched every harmonic kind of thing that I was listening for. So that's probably, I don't know if they sampled it directly off the 626, but you know, maybe it was a sample library where they had some 626 type sounds in it. The next sound is this, which is like a natural hi-hat sound on the one on the left. So I used Addictive Drums just for that hi-hat sound. I loaded up like a whole instance of Addictive Drums just to run one hi-hat because it's just really well sampled. There's alternate round robins, which means it doesn't play the exact same sample every time you re-push the note. So it'll play a different sample. So you don't get that machine gun effect when you play. It's not just with the exact same sound. It's like every time it happens, it's like slightly different. Okay. The one in the middle. This one, I went through so many samples. It seems like such a simple hi-hat, but I couldn't find the right harmonics up that high that did what I wanted. And eventually I was just like, I just ended up designing it from scratch. So I just opened up Vital and there's the sound. Super simple. It's just white noise with an amp envelope on it. Very simple. I just needed those harmonics with the white noise, right? Filter out exactly the white noise that I wanted. Okay, so that, oh, and then finally there's just this open hat, which is a combination of two sounds. This and this. Put together. Yeah. There are certain harmonics. This took me a while to figure out too. Something similar together. It sounds like this. There's this point in the beat where that open hat's really important. Let's check it out. It's like really important. So this is mine again. You know, actually I could probably bring up the 909 a little bit more. This bottom one is a 909. I could probably bring that up a little bit. I'm going to do that right now. Okay. Because I want more of that, which is like coming from a 909. And then the top one just has the sizzle. So together they kind of get somewhat close. In the mix, hard to tell, right? Okay. Oh yeah, and then the hats are being processed through Decimort, which is basically just like reducing the bit rate and the resolution of the samples a little bit to add a bit of sizzle. Here's with it. Here's without it. With it. Yeah, it's gain match too. And it's not 100% wet either. I'm, only mixing in a bit of that effect. Just to like kind of soothe the top end a little bit, even it out a little bit. It was sounding a little too cutting without it to my ears. Okay. We're done with the hi-hats. This is a really cool sound that's in here. I don't know it's probably just one sample on the original that's like that boom, boom, or boom, boom, which is like down the octave. I created it by using a combination of 3 different sounds. This is a timpani hit on the top. Okay. And there's a lot of nice harmonic content there for the mid-range to bring that note out. And then I'm also I'm widening it a bit with this Precision K stereo. I'm going to buy this plugin for sure because it's been super useful to widen ambient sounds like this that have like long decays. This plugin is so good at grabbing that information and just making it a bit wider. The next sound is this taiko drum I needed more of a chunky attack to the sound. Here's the taiko drum. So I'm mainly using it for the transient, and I was prepared to sample it and then cut the reverb tail off. But actually I found that the reverb tail kind of added more to the ambience of the timpani hit as well. So it kind of got it even closer. So I ended up leaving the tail on the taiko drum. The last sound is the sub bass. So this part is the bass part, right? It's like this timpani hit, orchestra hit type sound mixed with a sub bass. Now, if you're on small speakers, you probably don't hear that at all. But I added a little bit of mid-range so that it could pop through on small speakers. This is Bassline Pro. You can add, basically just add saturation to it, to the source sound, and then choose where those harmonics go. So you can add some harmonics to the stereo image and then widen them here. So we can see I'm getting a bit more like 240. Now that's the area where you're going to hear some of that on small speakers. But I don't think that's the goal. The original, it's a very subby sound, and I don't think much of it is making its way up to the mid-range. So I just added a little bit. I did notice width, so that's why I wanted this, because this will add width to the bottom end as well. So the original has quite a bit of width in the sub. Check it out. There's some width there. So I tried to match that here with the width. And those 3 together sound like this. Sorry. these three together sound like this. And that just sounded like it gelled in a way that was pretty similar to the original. Also, the timing on the original is weird. Like the second hits like early, like really early. Check it out. It's almost like a 30-second note early. So I kind of tried to replicate a bit of that by bringing the taiko drum in a little earlier. Or no, the timpani hits earlier than the taiko. Whatever. I messed with the timing a bit to try to match the original. Okay. Then there's this low tom. There's so many little cool percussion sounds on this beat. It was like so fun to make. Here's the low tom. Sounds like a drum machine to me. Where did I get that from? Here's the source that I bounced down. I was looking through XO. What did I end up using here? Yeah, it's a 909. This looks like it's coming from a folder that I Sounds from Mars. They've like sampled every drum machine. They have, and they've sampled different versions of it. Sometimes they sample it through preamps, so it's a bit more saturated or warm. So it gives you like tons of options. Like there's like 8 variations of the same sample from like different versions of the machine, and like it's pretty extensive. So yeah, Samples from Mars. It's a good place to just kind of get all the samples. All the drum machines, like 909, 808, 626, 727s, Lin drums, all like what's the I can't remember. There's like all the classic 80s drum sounds. They probably sampled it, so it's a good place to start for sourcing sounds. Strings. This was like this took me a little bit to figure out, because I don't know if this is exact, but it sounds like it came from a workstation from the early 2000s. So maybe like a Korg of some kind, like a Triton, something like that. It could have been a Roland workstation as well. Not like a super realistic string sound, more of like a synth string sound. So I ended up using an old Logic string sound, which would have been from a similar era, that was for GarageBand. So it's a really basic string sound. This is what it sounds like. Okay, now try to hear it in the original. Yeah, I didn't want it to be like a super realistic, like I have the BBCSO symphonic libraries, but it would have sounded too real. Like it would have sounded too good, and I'm trying to match it. That's going through the Logic Verb just to make it sound a little less present, and it's being sent to the room. Now, if I forgot to talk, like I'm sure a lot of these percussion elements are, room goes to the room, the timpani hits. So obviously I'm not going to send the sub to the room, because why? It's just going to muddy up the bottom end. But like most of these elements are going to get sent to the room a little bit. Not all of them, but just like if the sound needs a little bit more space compared to the original, a little bit more of a decay naturally, it's like, throw it to the room just a little bit. It'll glue the mix. Okay, the synth sound. Okay, here it is. Isolated. Cool. Original. Okay. Mine actually might be a bit more distant than the original. I could probably adjust that by taking the reverb within the plugin down a bit. But it's close enough. I think this sound was hard, because I think it was sampled maybe off a Roland analog board, because it reminds me of the Roland Super Saw. And I don't really have, besides like the Juno 106 keyboard that I have here, in plugins, I don't really have a lot of the Roland recreations. I used to have the Cloud, but I don't pay for it anymore. And kind of wish Roland would just let you buy them for a little bit less money up front. But the Super Saw is kind of what I was hearing. And I ended up, a Super Saw is basically just a bunch of oscillators slightly detuned from each other. So, and then widened a bit if that keyboard has that function. But it makes a really fat, like, saw sound, right? So a bunch of oscillators working together. And with this, I think I was hearing like not quite a super saw, but like maybe 3 oscillators detuned from each other to create like a wider synth lead sound. But it has like more like it's not necessarily a saw wave. It's square waves, I think, to create a bit more of a hollowness to it. Has a chimey sound, almost like a harpsichord. Is the original. There's a bit of an attack, so there's a bit of a decay on the attack, on the amp, and on the filter. So I just recreated it using 3 they call it the OPXA, but the OBXA by Oberheim. This is the recreation by Arturia. I did 3 of them, and then I adjusted the spread out on all 3 of them. It's the same sound being played. I just spread the tuning out on each one of them to create more of that super saw effect. So they're not all playing the exact same frequency range. They're all slightly wider or narrower from each other to get kind of a thicker sound. So this is like what 1 sounds like. Check it out. Right. Still pretty fat. Here's the next one. They're all just a little different from each other. Some of them are a bit less tuning stable, so that it sounds bigger. And then together, yeah, just nice and thick. I think I've got delays on all these. I should have just put these on the bus, but I was duplicating it, and I was too lazy to. And my CPU headroom was fine, so I just left it. Okay. Oh, here's another percussion sound. This should be up here. Why are you down here? This is a cool sound. This is the rim shots that happen right off the top. Check it out. So here's mine. It's not exact, but it has the correct effect. Pretty self-explanatory. I got it from Addictive Drums again, because anytime I want like just realistic sounding drums sourced, this is probably where I'll go most of the time. I've heard good things about Superior Drummer too, but I just know Addictive Drums really well. So to me, that's more valuable than messing around with a new plugin that I usually can get close to the thing I want with Addictive Drums really quickly. And I know how to dial it in, so. Yep, there's that sound. There's a pad. It's behind the mix, quite down in the mix, but check it out. Very down there, but it's there. There's definitely a pad playing those 2 chords. Yeah. I had this too bright for a bit, and I messed around with the filters. Again, I'm using the OBXA recreation here. On the original, you got 2 oscillators. Both could sound pretty fat if you used pulse width modulation. But on this one, I had the oscillator 2 up an octave, and it was just a little too bright. So I ended up going with just the lower oscillator a lot more to get like a warmer sound from it. Just a bit of EQ, bit of low end control. Okay, and now I have the Bee Gees. Okay, so Check this out. I had to record these BGs myself. They sound like this. It added a lot. It added a lot. So check out the original. Yeah, there's like this. It's like really subtle behind the vocals, and there's tons of reverb on it. It's more just to add reverby kind of swirliness to the like body to the mix, but it's totally there. Check it out. You can hear it actually a lot on the right channel. There's like a on that first note on the right channel. Yeah, so on that I have this plate, which I've been using a lot lately. This plate sounds so good. It's so smooth. I just wanted like some nice smooth top end, so the bass is all the way down. I have the low cut all the way up because I don't want any extra mud down there messing with my kick or my sub bass on the timpani sound. Full wet. Here's with it. And here's without it. Prepare yourself. I'm not a good singer. The reverb helps a lot. Reverb can make a bad singer a decent background singer, and that's about as much as it can do. Okay. Bit of EQ. Let's talk about that's it. That's it for sounds. That's all of them. So it's quite a few little individual moving parts. We're going to talk about the master bus. Here's where everything's being sent. Looks like I just put like a gentle clipper here. A little less than gentle. Oh, but it's on soft clip. That makes sense. So if I'm doing hard clipping, I probably wouldn't dig that deep into the waveform. You can see here, I'll zoom in. The red is what I'm kind of chopping off the waveform to control some of those hits. I think I have one of these on the kick too, or on like the drum bus. It's in there somewhere. Anyways, you pull the clip down to how much you want to chop off. In this case, I'm just soft clipping, so it's a little more gentle than the hard clipper. But if you really don't want any transients to go through, you can set it to hard clip and then maybe be a bit more gentle with your clipping, because it'll basically just create white noise wherever it cuts off the sample. And a lot of times it doesn't really matter because the peak of the sample could only be like 3 to 5, maybe 10 samples long, which is so fast that if it's a transient click or a little bit of white noise going, it's going to sound almost identical. And the benefit is you get a bunch of headroom and your compressors don't have to work so hard. They're not going to be like pumping super hard because you've got your dynamics under control. So yeah, I usually like to anything that's really punchy, and in this track there's a lot of punchy stuff. I definitely have it on the rim shot. That's for sure. There. It's at the end. Check it out on the rim shot. Yeah. Sorry about the CPU spikes. I don't know why that happened, but check this out. It's like chopping off quite a bit. That's like so much headroom right there. And to be honest, when I A-B'd it, I couldn't hear much of a difference. So it's like totally worth it. Check it out. With it, without it. Sounds exactly the same. I can't tell the difference. So all that happened there was I got how many dB of headroom? -6? Yeah, over -6 dB of headroom. And this is the loudest element in the mix. This is the punchiest, loudest element in the mix that's sticking through. So, boom, instant 6 dB. You don't have to hit it as hard with a compressor at the end. So finding those elements in your mix and like address it, it's going to be one of the louder things. Check to see if there's some transient information you can shave off without affecting the original sound too much. And grab it at the source, and then grab it at a few of the bus stages too, if you want. Once it's been combined, it might create some peaks here and there as sounds combine. Grab those a little bit and be gentler at this stage, right? And then finally, sometimes I'll grab it even at the master bus. This track just has a lot of transient pokey percussion stuff, so I decided I could successfully grab those peaks that were coming from different sources. Next up is our mastering compressor, but I'm using it as a mixing compressor, like a 2-bus compressor. And I don't even think I'm compressing again. I don't think I'm moving the needle. We'll find out. Nope. I'm just saturating a little bit. I've got the shape up this time. A lot of times I go to the left on the shape because it sounds that it'll make the transients a little softer. But I'm going to the right because this track I wanted more punchy, like that crack on the rim shot. I wanted that to stick out. Let's turn that on and off and take a listen. Check it out. Without. With. Without. And obviously we're getting a gain increase there too. So try to listen to the character of the track. It's hard to do, but a lot of people say like you have to gain match everything, and it's like, no, at this point of the mix, I'm trying to get gain. I'm trying to gain stage my mix up at this point. And this does it in a nice way. Like I like how it also widens the sound a little bit and does some other things. It adds some nice saturated content. It still sounds punchy. Like it's adding gain to my mix in a nice way. And this is also why I start my mixes low. I start each individual instruments low, so I have room to push it at different stages. So you'll see any new channel that I open always I have this as a default for my channels. There's a gain down here, and it usually opens at -10, so I adjusted this. So right off the bat, my sounds are down at -10. I am comparing it to a reference mix. I don't compare it to the reference mix at full blast because I'm not there yet. I'm not at that. The reference mix has been mastered. I haven't gotten to that stage yet. It's hitting all these stages of compression. So what I'll do is I'll turn the reference mix down, like way down, so that my sounds at a nice low volume I can hear them on top of the mix, and I can A/B, right? So I'm not trying to go for a full-blown mix right at the instrument stage. That happens later. That happens once I've used my stuff here in the master bus stage. This is where now I'm starting to gain up and like do it in a nice way where it's not bloating up the mix too much. It has a nice effect on the mix. Okay, next up is Saturn. I used a similar technique on this as in one of my other videos. I do this quite a bit actually to get some punch out of a mix. Looks like I have a few bands just disabled because maybe I just didn't like exactly what it was doing. But so the idea here is to get more punch out of the saturation. So I turn the dynamics down so it's like a punchy transient shaper. And then I drive that one's not on. This one's on. Okay. Yes. That one, I disabled the bottom end because it was fine. The mid-range, that makes sense. So I'm driving the mid-range and I'm making it a bit more punchy, right? So if I leave that on full dry, it's going to make that mid-range like too punchy and no sustain. So I mix the dry back in. You can mix each section of the signal back in on each band differently. So I just mix the dry back in to bring that body back in. So now I have a bit of saturated transients mixed back in with the original. And you can just add some punch to your mix like this. And you can also EQ that saturated transient information. So you can add, a bit of bite to a frequency range if you think it needs it. Doesn't look like I'm doing that here. I'm pretty much doing the same thing on all these bands. This one, I'm doing full wet from this, but I'm not reducing as far with the dynamics. So I'm just trying to get a bit of extra punch there. Next up is the APB limiter, which I talked about this in another mix, but this is analog gear that's sitting on the desk out here next to me. This is just the plugin, the visual representation of it. So it sends out to an analog channel strip, and the analog channel strip is basically being a limiter. And then it comes back in. So at this stage, it goes out to analog box and then back into the computer. And I'm just using this as a way to, again, gain the mix up. And I wanted to do it through transformers and like analog gear, similar to how you would have a console and you would be gaining up in stages on the console. It's adding some nice grit and, it's just clean gain. And it's compressing a little bit, I think. Yeah, very gentle. But because I started my mix so low, I can do this at different stages. I can gain it up in a nice way. I'm not already pinning it at the beginning of this, like up here at this top of this chain. All right. Here's with it. Without it. With it. Here, let's gain match it so we can hear. It'll probably be very subtle, but let's see if we can gain match it. Where are we going? 7.2 up, 7.2 down. Good enough. With it. Without it. I hear a bit more width. I just hear a bit of analog goodness there. It's a very subtle thing, but it just gains up your mix in a nice way. Okay, last one is, this is like the mastering stage. I would say everything before this plugin is just like mix bus type stuff. And then this is like the mastering suite that I have at the end. So I'll run through the settings here. And a lot of time I'm just using this to try to get the mix up to a certain point where it's competitive with the original. It's not super high on my priority list to get it like exactly the same like mastering level as the original, but I'll try to get it as close as possible. Here's the EQ curve. Impact, just getting rid of some of the pokiness. This is the duller side of impact. This is the brighter side of impact. This does a lot imaging. Check it out. The sparkle in the ambience sort of really spreads out. Clarity is doing a little bit of work. About plus or minus 2 dB. Stabilizer. Yeah, some good high-end control from stabilizer was like soothing a little bit of the stuff up there. Some notches. Couple harsh notches I thought needed to be tamed a little bit. I have the maximizer turned off because I got a lot of really good gain from the... I was hitting the targets I wanted just from the limiter that happened before it. So I found my gaining was at a pretty good place. And the maximizer just seemed to have like a weird effect on it. A lot of times the maximizer works great in Ozone, but this time it didn't seem to work. So that's another thing. It's like you don't always just use a plugin because it's like I always use this. It's like, Yeah, you can go to plugins that you know will probably work, but always, trust your ears. It's like, is it working? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, All right, I'm losing it. This was a long one. That's it though, I think. What should we do? Should we just call it? Let's just call it. Here's the, let's just go back and forth like once or twice again. Here's the original. Let's put the acapella back in just for fun. And the original. Oh, sorry. That was mine. That was mine again. I am losing it. Here's the original. Sick. Hey, if anybody made it through this, I'm super impressed. Yeah, I'm surprised anyone is watching this long ass video. But it's super fun to. I actually really enjoy doing this, and it's really fun to explain these. It's good for me too, because I have to explain myself. Why am I doing this stuff? If you guys are liking this, hit the subscribe thing or tell a friend about it. I realize it's pretty niche information, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.